Where did John get his inspiration from when writing the prologue of the Gospel of John? Trinitarians assume that the word or logos in John 1:1 is the pre-existent Jesus Christ. They borrowed the idea that the logos is a second God from Philo, a Jewish philosopher during John's day. This idea of second God was then applied to John 1:1 to support that Jesus is a second divine person called God the Son. There are three problems with the use of Philo's logos as second God. Firstly, Philo was a strict Jewish monotheist who believes in one and only God. He put his life in danger by opposing publicly the worship of the Roman emperor as God. Secondly, Philo regarded the logos or so-called second God as a concept or a power, not as a real person. This is noted by scholarly works such as the Catholic Encyclopedia, International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, and Encyclopedia Judaica. Thirdly, there is no evidence that John, a fisherman, was aware of Philo or of his philosophical teaching. Hence there is no basis for using Philo's idea to interpret the word in John's prologue. John gives us a very obvious clue as to where he got his root from. He tells us plainly that the word has to do with Genesis 1:1, by the phrase "in the beginning." In John's day, there was no chapter-verse numbering system for the Bible. This system was only developed later. Any person familiar with the scriptures upon hearing the phrase "in the beginning" would straight away think of the opening verse of Genesis. This is likened to a Christian nowadays, who upon hearing, "Our Father who art in heaven" would immediately think of the Lord's Prayer. In fact, there are not one but three obvious references to Genesis in John 1:1-3. When we go back to Genesis and look at chapter 1 of the creation account, the phrase "and God said" or similar phrase kept appearing. The repeated use of "and God said" is an emphatic way of declaring that God created all things by his creative word. Echoes of this creation account, which has not been fully completed as far as God's work in man is concerned, is continued in John 1:1-3. Trinitarians may argue that John 1:3 says all things were made through him rather than by him, implying another person, Jesus, who is not Yahweh God. We cannot depend solely on English translations as the various Bibles translate John 1:3 differently, some have through him and others have by him, New American Standard, King James Version. Whether it is in the Old Testament or in the New Testament, Yahweh was the only creator who created all things in Genesis without assistance from anyone. He himself emphasizes twice in Isaiah 44:24 saying, "I am Yahweh, who made all things, who alone stretched out the heavens, who spread out the earth by myself." To conclude, John was not inspired by Greek philosophy via Philo, but by the Hebrew scripture, which consistently teaches that Yahweh alone is the creator of all things. At the creation, Jesus had not yet existed, yet all things were created for him, that is, with him in view.